If the children keep you out of war, you better do a damn good job. I wanted the children with the more severe disabilities, not the children who couldn't read, the children who would probably never read.
Dr. Pat has a very inspirational story where he started as a public school teacher in the late 1960s, primarily teaching children with severe disabilities. This is where Dr. Pat had his realization that the materials and teaching procedures seemed a little inaccurate for these particular children. This marked the beginning of your lifetime dedication and the start of your book, Essential of Living.
Today's episode is brought to you by Security Financial Management.
Welcome back to Best Advice Podcast, guys. I'm your host, Rob Lavalio, here as always with the founder here at Security Financial Management and Dave Allen.
And joining us for the first time today is an essential figure in the field of applied behavior analysts with a rich history that spans over 5 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Patrick McGreevy.
I don't think we could have ever written Essential for Living. We thought about adults back to children. These are skills that make a difference in their life. Teaching people skills that matter in their life and will make a difference. And it's about teaching procedures that will make that happen, that have a better chance of making that happen.
Pat, how are you this morning?
Let me correct that.
Thank
It's
you.
actually Dr. Pat McGreevy.
Oh, excuse, you're right. Dr. Pat.
I like
Lots
it.
of people over the years have called me Dr. Pat. Yeah,
Okay.
that's been a common name for me over the years.
I like it.
We're going to go with Dr. Pat today.
So Dr. Pat, can you please just give us a little bit of insight of your journey to basically modernizing the entire education of individuals with disabilities?
Sure. I was a seminary student. For the first 2 years of college, I was in a seminary in Chicago, and I was studying to be a Catholic priest,
Goodness, I
which,
didn't know
which,
that.
which almost seems like another lifetime.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, I decided that I would take a respite, and I had the option I could have come back, but I chose not to. So then I came back and I went to college and I got a degree in psychology, which you really can't do much with. You know, you could buy you a cup of coffee if you're lucky. That's about all.
You diagnose all your
Yeah,
friends.
so I decided So I decided that I would go back to graduate school. And I had this incredible interest in children with severe disabilities. So I went back to the University of Iowa, where I had finished my undergraduate psychology degree, and I got into special education. And while most of the students there were studying how to teach kids that had difficulty reading, dyslexia was a brand new word in those days. I mean, literally, it just almost came into existence from almost nowhere.
Mhm.
That wasn't where my interest was. I wanted the children with the more severe disabilities, the children that couldn't speak, the children that couldn't get their needs at once met, not the children who couldn't read, the children who would probably never read, and for whom it was beyond anything they could do. So I found a professor that got me into that. And one of the first visits that we did was one of the state institutions in Iowa. And the story goes this way when other people tell it, is that Patrick was in with the real severe kids and you couldn't get him out. That's the way other people tell it.
You loved it.
I didn't want to leave. I found my home, really did. So then, when I graduated, I was 28 on the draft lottery. We were in the Vietnam War, way into it. And I was number 28, which means I would have been selected in January of the first year.
Gosh.
I would have been selected. And I was prepared. I had decided I would interview with a school district. And the superintendent himself interviewed me, not some coordinator. The superintendent came out and sat down with me. And he said, you know, I'd like you for the teacher because we have some difficult kids and I like the fact that you're a male. But here's the problem. We got the draft board and you got a 28 number. He said, with your permission, I'll talk to the draft board and see what happens. I see, with your permission. I said, yeah, you've got my permission. It's not that I'm against it. I'm a little bit against it, but philosophically, not in other
I'll go if
ways.
I have to.
Yeah. So a few weeks later, he called me in. He said, the draft board said that you can teach here and they will defer you for the time being. And so I started with the children. So it was either go to war or go with the children. So a friend of mine took me aside and he said, if the children keep you out of war, you better do a damn good job. You better get in there and be a hell of a teacher. And I tried to, so I did. And I taught for a bunch of years. After having contacted a professor at KU University, Kansas University, Ogden Leslie, I was interested in his work. I'd been to a couple of his workshops. I asked him if I could apply to be a doctoral student. And that day, one afternoon, in my little studio apartment, he called me and kept me on the phone for 2 hours. And it changed my whole life.
Now you're Dr. Pat McGreevy.
Now it's, and so he took me on as a doctoral student, and I went to Kansas University. I packed everything I had into a tiny little Ford Maverick, and off I went to Lawrence, Kansas. And I had never been there before. And he said, come. I spent the weekend, and then later, about 2 months later, at the end of the school year, I moved to Lawrence, Kansas. And I became a doctoral student of Ogden Leslie's. And what I was just beginning to realize at the time is why that was monumental for me is because Ogden was a doctoral student of the world famous B.F. Skinner.
Okay.
So I was going to be a second generation Skinnerian. And
Skinnerian.
that
Skinnerian, I
just
like that.
blew me into next week.
Yeah.
And I said, oh boy, wow, I got a lot to live up to. I got a lot of things to read, because these people expect a lot of you. So on I went, finished my PhD, taught a little bit more, and then later in life, I stopped working for people and set up my own business. And I became a consultant for all sorts of programs, hospitals, schools, school districts in 7, 8 different countries.
Do you mind, Dr. Pat, talking about your book a little bit and what kind of initiated the success of the book?
Essential for Living is the name of his book. Pat told me it took around 7 years to get this going. Started in, I think, 81 with this book, and then has become this one, and I think it's 6 generations now, 6 rewrites.
It is.
And this book's not just a book that somebody read, it is a textbook for many colleges. I'm going to let Pat get into that.
I was convinced that the guides that were available out there didn't get to where our children were. And so that's what we did. We have a whole section in Essential for Living, 46 different ways to function as a speaker other than spoken word. 46 of them. 46 of them. People think you point to pictures and you may use a few signs and it's over. It's not. It's 46. And each one is a page in the book that describes all the details of when it might be appropriate to use that method of speaking. And then we teach people, if you don't have a method of speaking, we're going to get you one. We're going to teach you a way to make the world come to you.
We're going to study you, and we're going to create something that works for you.
This works for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely works for you.
Dr. Pat is best known and well known around the world for modernizing teaching for individuals who have disabilities and modernizing the benchmarks for different individuals. And what I mean by that is an individual that is born with a very high IQ, right, should not have the same benchmark as far as education as someone who has trouble telling their parents they're hungry, right? So
Does he have it right, Pat, or is...
Oh, you've got it exactly right.
Okay.
Talk on that
This
for a little
this
bit,
is
Mark.
meant, Essential for Living is meant. See, there are probably right now 15 or more curricula out there for kids with disabilities. What makes this uniquely different, this is for the children with the most severe disabilities. This is not about reading. This is not about learning to write your name. It's not about that. It's, for us, that's a high-level skill, very high level. Most of our children will never get there. But this is about if your favorite thing is apple juice and you want apple juice, but you can't use spoken word, you don't know how to make sounds, we can show you how to ask for apple juice when you want it, reliably. I always struggle with how to say this in the most respectful way possible. It's the children with the most severe limitations and the adults. It's the children that the other curricula that are out there are too high level for them. They're not worried about letters of the alphabet. Does C come after B? Most of our children don't even know what the letters of the alphabet are.
It never will.
No, it never will.
If you want to
Or
express they're thirsty.
yeah, you want a sign, you want a picture, you want something that helps you have a better life. Have a higher quality of life.
How do I have a better quality of life with themselves personally and their family? It also is as much training the family on how to deal with somebody with these conditions and how they can coexist better.
And so our curriculum, Essential for Living, was not meant to compete with the other curricula. The other curricula, most of them, in fact, almost all of them, pretty much all of them, end up with academic skills. Ours never gets to academic skills. It just doesn't get there. It might, the highest level skill might be if you pointed to a bottle of apple juice when you wanted it. That's a pretty high level skill for us. Wow. So that's what I did, and it took me about 7 years to finish this curriculum. I had lots of experience from lots of classrooms and lots of places, but I was determined, and I remember how this title came about. You see, because we had lots of other titles that sounded much more like the other titles, see? And then one day, a friend of mine said to me, you've got to get this away from education. You got to get this to life, to living, to stuff that would happen in everyday living. So that's where living came.
Yeah,
that's where living came.
So in the front of the book, it says Essential for Living, a communication, behavior, functional skills, curriculum, assessment, professional practitioner's handbook for children and adults with moderate to severe disabilities. So if that's the case, that's who this book appeals to.
And so the Essential came about because we said, okay, if you want to have a better life, what are the most important skills that will achieve that? And that's where the title Essential for Living came from. Because this was, if you want a better life, most of it for our children. And we have children who have developmental disabilities like Down syndrome and all sorts of others, hundreds of others. Down syndrome is one of the most well-known. But then also children that have multiple and severe disabilities, children who are blind and deaf and orthopedically impaired, all at the same time, all simultaneously, you see? And the other curricula don't try to get there, but this is us. This is who we are. And, excuse me, we don't try to be academic at all. We don't. That's not us. This is us. And that's what makes it different. And it's not a criticism of the other curricula. They're dealing with different issues.
No, it's your segment of it. It's your segment of market.
This is our piece.
It's your niche.
It is our niche. And there really isn't, at this point in time, there isn't much else out there in this niche.
Dr. Pat, do you mind talking about your personal experience with your own child who had disabilities?
Yeah, and what I've been talking about is my experience as a professional. But meantime, in all of this, I'm married into a family. One of whose members was a young lady, Kristen, with Down syndrome. And so I became not only a professional working in the field, but I became a parent. And it became very real, hour to hour, day to day.
That's why people value your opinion so much too. Obviously you're a doctor, obviously you're educated, but you also lived it. You didn't just write it. It was real life for you, right? you're a study of the game and then you live the game, you have a whole different
Mhm.
understanding.
Absolutely.
And
So that became my life as a parent and my life as a teacher and as a teacher of teachers and as a book writer continued on.
what a crazy coincidence. Just let me say that real quick.
Yeah.
Almost like a God wink that like the person you end up marrying really had someone in the family already that needed someone like you in their life.
When we took Kristen to a specialist in Tampa that had opened a practice in developmental pediatrician, as developmental pediatricians, they took a couple of the nurses, took Kristen over and played with her and did some stuff and music and everything while they sat down with us. And they said, go home and get every day you can. And that's it. That's all we got. There's nothing else. There's nothing else you can do. She's liable to have a heart problem, but I think you already know that. And yeah, we did. Because it
They told you it was maybe a year, right?
oh,
And you got
could
25.
be any time. And we got 25 years. And then one day we're sitting on the couch, we only lived a few blocks from here. And we were sitting on the couch and she started to shake and scream and she fell on the floor. And we took her to the hospital. And the ambulance came, got her. And the next morning she passed her. Positive. No pain. And she and mom and I watched her take her last breath.
Unbelievable. What a blessing.
Now, I think why it has an additional effect on me is because I have either been at or became aware of countless number of other children with developmental disabilities that I provided services for at some time that are no longer here.
Yeah.
That are no longer here. But when you get into these children, you know that's going to happen. And a friend of mine used to say, this is a field for grown-ups. This is not a field for people who haven't grown up yet, because you're gonna have death around you all the time. And so if you haven't grown up, you got to get there, because this isn't the field for you if you're not. But this has never been about them being academic. This has never been about them being close to typical. It's never been about that. What it's been about is making life a little bit better along the way.
It's unbelievable, man. And it's so refreshing to have someone like you just be so real and genuine.
Yeah, and I know people might suggest or think that this is a rehearsed line. This is not a rehearsed line, what I'm going to say right now. I get kind of emotional at times.
It makes me emotional.
I never, in 30 years, ever once thought of anybody else to plan our financial life than Dave and Frank. Never once even thought of anybody else. Never once did it ever occur to me. Did I ever even think about it? I was always happy with what they did, always. They sat, they listened, and I, in about just slightly less than a month from now, I will be 80 years old. So that, I think about that a lot, because my wife, Phyllis, is 71. There's a pretty good chance she's going to live a lot longer than me.
That's good.
And so that's important, that she has financial wherewithal.
You were very concerned with making sure she would be okay.
For a while, it was Kristen and Phyllis and my son Hunter, but Hunter now has his job, he has his own investments. His father left him some money, so he's okay. And, like I said before, I'm not trying to make this a commercial for Security Financial. I'm not. I really don't. I really mean this right straight from right here. I don't know what I'd have done without these guys. these guys guided me. Once I got with them, then I always brought my questions to them. I never worried about stuff. I'm not a finance guy. I really don't know the first thing about finance stuff. And so I needed somebody who would help me. And then a couple of times when I needed an attorney, they were there to help me with that too.
Well, before you get an attorney, yeah.
Yeah, they're not attorneys, but they were helpful getting me to an attorney.
Yeah, we understand what they
And now I look forward to, I mean, while I have a pacemaker, but I'm in good health otherwise, reasonably good health for an almost 80-year-old guy.
Very good.
But I look forward to the time that if when I'm not here, that Phyllis will have partners, and they will all she'll have to do on the days that I spend the last day here is that they will call these guys. She will call them.
And that'll be our
And that
pleasure
will
too.
all be all she'll need to do. That's enormously comforting. Enormously comforting. Because, well, you got to get an attorney, you got to do this, you got to do this. No, you have to call Dave or you have to call Frank. That's it. That's all you have to do.
We got it from there.
And she knows. And that's enormously comforting.
Amazing. So what was the connection, or how did you guys get connected between you and Dave, or you and my dad, or excuse me, you and my Frank?
I was talking with Phyllis this morning, and she said, oh no, that was only a few weeks after, when we met Dave and Frank was only a few weeks after you and I got married. It wasn't very long.
Well, you jumped right on the, you
Yeah,
just went
she
to work.
said, boy, you were anxious to get into the financial stuff,
I met Pat and Phyllis back in 1996. We have a specialty in our practice of financial and estate planning for families that have a member with disability. And we did a presentation to a family support group. We got asked to come in and talk. I mean, I'm telling you, it was 30 years ago. We still have many of those clients, but I mean, Pat and Phyllis have been our clients for 30 years. And their daughter, who passed around 4 or 5 years ago, Kristen, was the reason they were in there to learn. Ours was a different type of yours was the essential for living and helping. Ours was what happens when a parent who's taking care of a kid, an adult with a disability, and they're dependent upon you. And if you were to pass away and you're gone, how is this person, how do you fend for their life? So it's the proper legal work we had attorneys that are still with us that still do the work on special needs trusts. That's basically a document that the money doesn't belong to the kid with disability, but it's for their benefit. So we spoke on that. We also spoke on the financial planning that you need to do to not only take care of yourself, because I mean, so much of being a parent with a kid with disability is that you have to be unselfish. And sometimes you're so unselfish that you forget about taking care of yourself. And one of our job was to say, hey, if you're not financially healthy, your kid's not going to be financially healthy. So take good care of yourself, and your kid's going to be okay too. With the right planning, the wrong planning, it can be disastrous. You never want your kid with a disability who's on government benefits or SSI or Medicaid to receive money outright, because they'll lose all their benefits. And that's tragic. And it's all your hard work will be lost. So he came to a presentation, and then they came in and became clients back in the mid-90s.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. I just want to say this has truly been amazing.
I always like to say that when you're needing planning for this, that's Pat McGreevy. But if anybody has a family member with a disability and they're concerned and they need to be connected with all the right people, the lawyers, the estate planning, the financial planning, feel free to reach out to Security Financial Management. And when we do planning for people that have a family member with disability, it's not all the planning for them, it's planning for you. It's kind of like, I'm not going to put this in perspective, is that we have to train you to get your life, because if your personal life and your finances is not healthy, nor is it going to be for your family member with a disability. So the whole goal is for you to get successful financially and have a good life for yourself, because you're a person too. So many people in that field, they're so unselfish because they've been taking care of this person their whole life that they have not taken care of themselves. So you got to take care of yourself, take care of your own personal finances, and then at the same time, that little corner of making sure that the Kristens of the world, if they were to survive you, have a good quality of life beyond you. And also, there's so many intricate features from the estate and the financial, the ownership, and the designations and trust work they have to go through. That's what we understand. So reach out to us at Security Financial. We're happy to help in that area as well.
Remember, folks, the secret to wealth is not what you earn, it's what you keep. Happy days, everybody.
This podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only and is not intended as personal financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please do your own research and consult a financial advisor as needed.